They're doing practices based on a system that doesn't exist anymore. My name is Damon Brown of DamonBrown.net. My main thing is helping you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite analogies or favorite fables from Thanksgiving and how it applies to our business. In short, why so often we're not willing to grow and how that ends up stunting, not stunning, it's not stunning, stunting our growth, not only right now, but into the future. Again, I'm Damon Brown of Bring Your Worst Show. Be sure and subscribe and click like if you're feeling this content. Again, this story, love it. There's a couple, they're making Thanksgiving ham, and one of the partners gets the ham out and starts slicing the back end of it. Not just a little back end, but like a third of it. So they got 2/3 of ham. I love ham. I would have a problem with that. So of course their partner's like, yo, what are you doing? And they're like, well, I'm cutting the ham. And they're like, well, why? Why are you cutting that precious ham? And they're like, well, this is how we cook ham. This is how my mom does it. And the partner's like, well, why, right? And they're like, well, this is just how we do it. And they're like, nah, you're not gonna cut the ham. Hold on. Well, let's find out why. All right. So they go to the mother and the mother-in-law's place. It's like, hey mom, I'm making the ham and I'm cutting it. Why do we cut it? And she's like, well, I don't know. I mean, we just do. It's like, well, why? It's like, well, that's how Nana does it. That's how Grandma does it. Okay. So then the couple go over to the nursing home, the convalescents. And it's like, Nana, it's like, hi. It's like, happy to see them. It's like, Nana, why do we cut the ham? She's like, what? I would do that too. I'm not even old. And the partner's like, no, like the Thanksgiving ham, why do we cut the back of the Thanksgiving ham? It's wasting all this food. Why do we cut it? And she makes a face. She's like, oh yeah. Well, it was during the war, and Henry and I, the grandfather, Henry and I, he just came back from the war. And so we couldn't really get a big place. And so we had this tiny oven. So the only way that we could fit the ham in the oven, which we were grateful for, is by almost cutting it in half. That's the Thanksgiving ham story. They're doing practices based on a system that doesn't exist anymore. Their grandparents were too poor to get a big oven. So they did what they had to do to make Thanksgiving dinner with the ham. The daughter saw that, started doing it. Partner saw that, started doing it. But they never questioned why they were doing it. It gets into systems. Dan Heath talks about this in his book, Upstream. I talk about this in my new book, Built From Now, How to Know Your Power, See Your Abundance, and Nourish the World. The deluxe edition is going to be coming out soon. That's going to be salmon colored. If you read the book, you know why it's salmon colored. So that's a little Easter egg for you. Shout out to those of you who have supported the book so far. You have to understand the systems that you're in. As they say, a fish doesn't know that it's in water. That's part of the reason for having this channel, this discussion, for me writing my books, is to remind you of the water that you're currently in. Because if you're having issues, if you're capping yourself, as we say nowadays, it might be because you don't know what system you've created and what system that you were born into. So there's two big things with this story. The first thing is that whatever systems we have, they're almost certainly outgrow our usefulness. They will almost certainly outgrow our usefulness. If you think about, I always use a 5-year measurement. 5 years ago, I was a dad of one. My youngest son wasn't born yet. My eldest son was about 2 years old. He's about to turn 8. He's about 2 years old, 2.5 years old. Imagine if I was still using the systems I would use as the parent of one child. That's not possible. The idea of hand-me-downs, sharing, breaking up battle. There are two boys who are both super strong-willed. So I've been like, particularly as we've been sheltering in place, I've been like a part-time referee. All these different skills that I'm learning, and my wife, all these different skills that we're learning, they didn't exist 5 years ago. But then taking this parent analogy further, think about my kid, my eldest, who was almost 3 at the time of this recording 5 years ago. He's almost 8. 5 years ago at age 3, he was finishing up potty training, and he was learning how to spell his name, learning how to read, those kinds of things. Now he reads at a much higher level and knows how to spell his name, and he's much bigger now too. When we don't update our systems, when we don't reflect on the water that we're in as fish, then we're stuck in that same system. But then we wonder why we can't get the new clients. We wonder why we don't feel motivated. We wonder why we want to procrastinate all the time. Because we're using old systems, but we're a new person. That's the ham analogy. So number one, you need to update your systems. Part of that happens, at least for me, happens in reflection. That's why I meditate, and I meditate in the corner right over there. With me doing that, that causes everything to stop. And I think about the water that I'm in as a fish. That might come from walking, that might come from exercise, that might come from journaling, some type of pause for you to recognize how much your world has changed. Otherwise, we're still working on the systems that we had 5 years ago. I talked about that quite a bit in Ultimate Bite-Sized Entrepreneur 2. I think a chapter is called Update Your Systems or something like that. But if you grab the book, you'll find it in there. You know what I'm talking about. But I get a lot deeper into this. So number one, systems automatically outgrow their usefulness. That's just how they work. Right? This is how it is. Again, I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. If my partner and I end up having the same family system that we had when we were newlyweds, this house would be a mess and our kids would be severely neglected, right? So everything outgrows its usefulness. Just accept it. Number two, you have to give room to thrive. Number two, you have to give room to thrive. What I mean by that is actually giving space. Dan Heath talks about this in his book, Upstream. Again, I recommend it. It's about systems. One of my favorite books right now, where you have to give slack in whatever you're creating. In other words, if you're too regimented, if you're just go, 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 if you're cutting the ham, but you're not thinking about the process, you're not giving yourself slack. If the person cooking had stopped for a second and said, we have this beautiful ham. Wait, why am I cutting it again? That requires slack. That requires time. Well, it requires the resource that I talk about, build from now. Now I think about it. It requires focusing. It requires being agile and adapting to new things. It requires the time to think about it. And it requires the energy to put into that thought. It requires the resources. These are resources that we all have. We just don't recognize that we all have them. You need those resources. You need that slack. That's why the idea of slowing down a little bit, the idea of, again, recognizing the water that you're in. If that never happens, the systems can never be updated. It's called a system because it's automatic and it goes on its own. It's based on inertia. If you have inertia in your business, in your career, then how can you be unhappy when you're not getting what you want, when your goals and your ideas might have changed? In fact, I'm positive that they've changed. You are probably not after and thinking about things the same way that you did 5 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe even 6 months ago. Particularly as we go through this grand reset, as I talk about in Build From Now, we go through this grand reset as we get into this post-pandemic world. All of us have had to pause. That's why we don't want to go back into the office. That's why we're realizing how much family time and personal time we've missed in grinding things out. That's why we don't want to make money the same way. That's why we're not making the same art. I know I'm not. You're probably not either. That's why we have this dissatisfaction, because we paused enough and now we have the room to thrive. Build For Now is part of that conversation, but this ham analogy is the best way to encapsulate it. See, now I'm hungry. Now I got to eat lunch because I want a ham sandwich now. I hope this gives you some good insight. Be sure and check out my free playlist on emotional intelligence. It highlights the queen of emotional intelligence, Brene Brown, as well as other folks such as Oprah. I think there's stuff from Simon Sinek in there. It's a variety of videos. It's about 12, 13, not too long either, like 10, 15 minutes. Each video gives you more insight and more game so you can make those bigger decisions, recognize that you're a fish in water, and recognize the water that you're in. There's nothing wrong with having systems. Again, I'm a systems thinker. Build For Now is about systems. So systems are beautiful, but they need to be updated. Where are you cutting your ham? The playlist will help with that discussion. And if you're feeling the content, be sure to like it, share it with people that need to hear this, that they're cutting their ham still, and be sure to subscribe so you can catch it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, currently at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. And I'm giving you as much game as possible because I want you to succeed. Until next time, remember to bring your worth and that you can always build from now. Take care.